So you're going to go make yourself a coffee. Are you going to use a shot glass? You're going to use a scoop, some scales, or are you going to be measuring with just time? What are we using these days? What is best practice to make sure you get consistent, great tasting coffee? Let me talk you through which one you should be using, when and why. Back in my day, when I started making coffee in 2004, I'm 17 years old and I get on a machine and here I am doing all the tricks. I've got different methods of getting the coffee into the basket. We didn't use scales. We were using measuring glasses and everything was really done by eye. I had to drink a lot of coffee to truly know what over extracted was, what under extracted was, and that's just what it was. And a lot of that stuff plays into coffee making today. We want to make sure that we're still tasting the coffee and knowing what the different methods we use and the effect that they have on the end result. But today it is a lot easier. There's some great technology out there, but there's also some simple things that we can use in our coffee making process to make sure that we can replicate the coffee when it tastes good or not make the same mistakes again. I've now done hundreds of videos of how to make coffee. Check them all out, go back and watch the back catalog of all the videos and check out the comments. There's always someone in the comments going, but what about the time? How long did that go for? And what did you weigh in and what did you weigh out? Or how my scoop is the wrong size. So this, I want to just got to talk through the three main components. That's volumetrics, that is either a scoop or the liquid going into a milliliters, or we're talking about weight or time. So the three main things in coffee making process. So let's get started on volumetrics. The good old scoop to start with. Now, we're talking about consistency. The thing we want to get good at in coffee is being able to replicate when we do something right, follow a recipe and repeat the same process until we improve and get great tasting coffee. Now, the thing about a scoop, even though they do get supplied by many of the brands that come in many of the boxes with new machines, my issue with them and the challenge you'll face is that the amount of coffee that's held in that scoop, even if you get a flat top on it, is dictated by your grind size. If you have a coarser grind size, you will have a lighter amount of coffee in there, and therefore your coffee will brew differently. You also might, it's just a amount you're doing by eye. And then to go a bit deeper on that, different coffees have different densities and therefore will weigh different amounts. So you've kind of got a couple of things moving against you there, like your light roast will be a little bit more dense and actually be heavier than your darker roasts. Then there's the trusty shot glass, or the 30 ml shot glass, which once upon a time was just 30 mils, 30 seconds. And that was just a basic recipe, which we should all know by now that it's not quite the full equation. But we would essentially run a single shot under this and we would program the machine or maybe just pull our shots out when that shot glass was full. Now, the issue we have with this method is that there's two main things. There's TDS, so we truly don't know how much actual coffee and therefore strength of coffee is kind of going into that cup. So it depends on your extraction as to how much flavor essentially lands in the cup. So it's a really quite a questionable variable amount that's going to land in there as well. Plus crema. So if you're using old coffee, it's going to take you a longer amount of time to fill that up because there's no bubbles, no volume to it, as opposed to using a fresh coffee, which is going to be quite gassy. It's going to be much larger and it's going to fill that cup straight away. And as it settles, it might even pop some of those bubbles and go back down, which is just another variable that we want to just cut out of the equation. So let's not continue to use the shot glasses because of the age of our coffee and that TDS. So let's talk about the main thing that you need to make sure you have to get the consistency in your coffee making process. And that is scales. Whether you're spending $30 or $430, we want to make sure you've got a set of scales. Now, you don't have to be a fancy specialty coffee shop to do this. You can be making coffee at home. And if you are a fancy specialty coffee shop and you don't have scales, what are you doing? You really need them to make sure you get the consistency. We're going to be weighing our yield. So instead of using that shot glass and going against the age of the coffee, we're going to be weighing the yield and programming the machine to remember how much yield is going into that cup, and the amount of yield is going to be dictated by that dose. So let's say we follow a simple normale recipe. We're going to weigh the amount of coffee that goes in to the dosing pot or into our portafilter. So you can weigh into a dosing pot straight onto scales like we do with the Ampham SP2. You could buy a grind by weight grinder. They're amazing, and they're just going to change the workflow a little bit. Or you could be weighing your portafilters, filling it up and weighing them again to make sure you've got the right amount of dose. So say you've got a 22.5 gram dose, we're going to then weigh the yield out at a 1:2 ratio. So it'll give us 45 grams of yield. And that gives me the confidence that I've got a great specialty coffee recipe and ratio to work off, but I won't be able to measure that with a scoop or a shot glass or anything other than my scales. I just mentioned the normale ratio of 1:2, but what about when we go big and we start thinking about cold brews and batch brews? We're talking about a batch brew ratio of maybe 1:16. Now, with water, 1 gram of water can equal 1 mil, but it's not the same in coffee because of the TDS. So we take that out of the equation, and we're going to think about the 16 being the water. So I can measure 1.2 liters of water or 1.2 kilos of water. And then I need to divide that 1.2 liters by 16 to give myself a dose of coffee to put in that batch brew. So if I've got 1.2 liters of water or 1.2 kilos of water, I then need 75 grams of coffee for that batch brew. So we're going to need our scales for our different methods once we start using ratios, which is what you need to be following if you're going to start making specialty coffee and following along with other people's recipes. You'll find that a lot of people are using grams now, and we're moving away from mils. And lastly, the magical time. Time is the thing that everyone is hooked on, and it's the thing that you need to be the least worried about. It's actually an indicator of whether your recipe worked or not. So if you're following a recipe and you've got your 22.5 in and you've got your 45 out and you taste that coffee at 35 seconds and you love the taste, that is the time that you should be trying to replicate. So when you go back to your cafe tomorrow, or you make a brew the next morning and you know that you're going to need to change your grind and maybe you get a 30-second extraction, that 30 seconds is the number that everyone's clinging to, but it's actually not relevant to maybe your coffee or your equipment or the age of your beans or the size of your basket, all these different variables. So time is more of an indicator that you've followed a recipe and that your grind size is giving you the outcome that you desire. So don't get too hooked on time. It's actually just more of a great indicator that you're on recipe. And if you taste the coffee and you feel like it tastes better at 32 seconds or 34 seconds, this is what we call dialing in. This is what makes you a great barista, and this is what we used to do back in the day when we were just drinking a lot of coffee. And the more you learn about coffee and the more you taste coffee, you realize that there's some really interesting things that can happen at different times depending on that coffee. So they are the 3 main things. So let's make sure we are timing our shots, we're weighing our dose, and we're weighing our yield. And these things are consistent day in, day out. Whether you're at home, you're a home enthusiast, or you're in a cafe, implement some processes into your coffee making so that you can get consistent, great tasting coffee day in and day out. And that is how we do it. Have I missed anything? Please let me know in the comments below. I love to read them, and the community learns from each other. If you want to know more about brew ratios or recipes or just how to dial in, we have hundreds of other videos on coffee making for the home barista or the cafe barista. So check them all out. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it. Bye.